come on, man.
Alright, there we go.
Call the April 28th meeting to order at 11:16 a.m. Get it started.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I was waiting for Sarah to come in the room. I didn't forget the words. All right. Motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Bills for the week. $976,647.48, of which $747,683 were for American Structure Point paid by grant money.
I will make a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Then and now, $48,688.23.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Skip the formal complaint. We have an application for training from Mark Thompson. Appropriation of $0. Homeland Security meeting on May 1st, 10 a.m. at OSU Extension Center.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Need your autograph on that.
Oops, I gave him my didn't
Planning and Development, asset disposal form, 1 4-door filing cabinet, legal size, not needed. If I go on the auction site, and, motion to approve this disposal.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Appropriations, we have Ross County Auditor from the General Fund to the attorney fees of Common Pleas Court, $15,000. This is an increased appropriation for attorney fee costs in Common Pleas Court. They already used the original $18,000 budgeted for the year.
They already used $18,000 for that budget for a year. They want another $10,000.
15.
15. But they budgeted only 18 and they knew that they needed 25. So moved.
Second.
I'll call more.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Appropriation from the commissioners for the general fund to go into detention pond maintenance, 14 different sites for a total of $7,410.
So moved.
Yeah, second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
County transfers from the general fund to CLE, litter, and dog kennel funds. This is part of their normal annual appropriations for $3,432,281.67.
So
$3,357,000 for the correctional law enforcement. The other 70,000 for litter and dog kennel. Got a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then we have another transfer from general fund to VOCA and SBAA to cover shortage due to insufficient grant funds. This is for $44,579.
who's this to?
Hmm?
Who is this for? Who's requesting this appropriation?
This is from the treasurer. For VOCA and SBAA.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Kathy, would it be possible for you to start emailing these prior to today's
I thought I
meeting?
did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did I miss them?
Yeah, you missed it.
Yeah, that was
I got the
there
agenda.
were
We'll forgive you.
four
For Monday.
of them on that single attachment.
Maybe, okay, that's why I missed it.
All the appropriations come together in transfers.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I missed it. I must have looked at the wrong email.
Final appropriation is, comes along with a resolution. And this is for the roads, Township Road Maintenance Fund. We thought we'd take this in separate parts because the full resolution takes 2 public hearings. And they want to get these funds out there and circulating while it's early in the construction season. So I'm talking to you specifically right now because I know how.
I can't get you guys to change your mind?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
You know, and I think the reason is 16 townships unanimously voted this way, regardless of conversations in the background. And I think that was a good move, solidarity and working together to.
But you didn't put it out to the public, for the public people of the other townships to know what was going on.
Well, I think
Because
they
I
did.
get people,
Wasn't that the-
I got people from Union Township, I got people from Concord Township, want to know why are they getting shortchanged when the money that we're giving out.
Mhm.
And I said, you need to talk to your trustees about that. And I told them that I was gonna stick to my guns and vote no for that to make it an equal amount. And go back to road mileage. Because their thing was, if I have a township that has 4 miles of road, why am I getting the exact same amount of money that a township that has 25 miles of road? They say it's not fair. And I said, well, you're absolutely right. In my opinion, it's not fair. Because if I'm getting $55,000, what is that township gonna do with that $55,000? I heard from one township says, well, I can use that $55,000 to hire somebody part-time. Well, that's not what that money's for.
No, it's for road maintenance.
It's for road maintenance. Well, does he hire somebody who's part-time? Is he gonna use that part-time person to do road maintenance? Because I can see that happening. But my thing is, again, let's go back to the original plan of this whole thing, even though it was stopped for almost 20 years. Let's go back to the original plan of what it was.
I think that last point that you made, though, is the reason why the townships have agreed and have discussed the equal split on the first year, is because of that 20-year break. I'm of the mind that long-term, I don't think that it makes any sense to make it an even split. I think road mileage is the way to
Right.
look at that long-term, and that's why I like about this resolution, is that it speaks to both the short-term and the long-term. You know, and I hear what you're saying, but I also hear and agree with Jack. These townships have gone through, at our request, we could have break this down however we wanted it, and I think it was an effort of partnership and collaboration on our part, to have the level of conversation that we did. The townships, even the ones who would be receiving more, if it were split by road mileage, have agreed for the first year to do that. And you know, if there are their constituents who are upset with that, you know, that's a conversation for them to have, but with them. But for us, you know, our partners are the townships, and every township has come back and told us, you know, we want this to be evenly split. Those trustees are elected by the people of their townships, and so I have to stand with them and hear what they're saying on that. And so for me, first year, equal split. Beyond that, road mileage.
Let's look around the corner too. Got information from our auditor Friday about projections first quarter income from various things. One of them was sales tax. And what we're dealing with, the $55,000 even split here is $88,000, and that was based on $6.7 million being that 0.5% piggyback tax of income that would go to the engineer and capital funds and whatnot. First quarter of 2025, now $6.7 million for the entire year of 2024. First quarter of 2025 is $3.2 million. Sales tax, I don't know how much seasonality that has in pickup and reduction. It's sale of goods in the county. I would think it would go up in the summertime with tourism and whatnot, but just taking the 4.3 million times 4 quarters for a 2025 valuation of that $500,000 is 9.2 million, not 6.7 million. So this part of the current townships is $871,000. That's the 2024 take on 6.7 million. You take 13% take on 2025 for the townships of 9.2 million, and that comes to a total of $1,196,000, or an increase of $325,000 than what they're getting from the 80,000. You see, do you understand what I just said?
Yeah, so right.
So we're looking at a higher number for 2025 than what we're dealing with the split for the even split. Then you look at Union Township, who by the 149,000 that we were given for the last 20 years or whatever that is, they usually got an annual contribution of $13,900 per year based on mileage. This year on the even split, they go up to 55,000 with everybody else.
But if they
The
did,
next year, they really got some money moving,
they could have more money this year.
but they would be the only township making improvements.
Concord,
Well, you know what I'm saying.
I know, but I'm just, you know, me being a resident of Concord Township, you know, it upsets me that I'm going to give money back or give money to another township that doesn't have as many road mileage, and that's what this money is for, is roads. So I'm going to have to do less with my roads than I normally do, or I could have done.
I look at this as the next step of cooperation throughout the county regarding our comprehensive plan. we get them used to working together and making sacrifices for other townships, and we're all better because of it. That's the template for real growth and faster growth than what would
Okay,
otherwise be siloed.
For this year, we'll go even steady. Next year, we'll go even steady. For now on, we'll go even steady.
We're not saying that. That's not what the townships voted for. They said coming out of a 20-year drought,
Yeah.
that everybody started off on an even keel, and it was requested by the small townships, it was. But there are less benefactors, or to the even distribution, there's more benefactors than there are people that are thinking they're suffering. And really, nobody's suffering, because the amount of money going to road maintenance increases so significantly. This is the only opportunity we have to do something.
This is more money for everyone,
Yeah.
regardless of the split.
13,000, 14,000 to 55,000.
I think that there was a couple townships during that township meeting, if they hadn't been bullied like they were during that township meeting, they would stick to their guns.
They came back with signed documents.
I know, but
saying
if they wouldn't have got bullied during that township meeting, association meeting, I think they would have stuck to their guns.
Maybe so. I can't say. I'm not going to hypothesize on a what if.
Well, I will.
I just deal with what's in writing in front of me.
Okay.
So,
A point of clarity here, and maybe we can adjust this as we go after this, but I believe, my understanding is that we've actually already appropriated $149,000 for 2024. So really,
Right.
this appropriation, I don't think it's a problem to appropriate it at 830, but, or 880 or whatever this number is that's on that appropriation. Technically, we only need to appropriate an additional 740 some, but that's just a detail to point out. I would still think that the cap for that payout should not exceed the total 880. When you count in the 140-ish that's already been appropriated. You
Okay.
understand what I'm saying?
yeah, I understand what you're saying. We're going to have to subtract 14.9 off the 880,
Yeah.
which would be 66.
Is that something we do here now as an amendment, or is that, can we pass this and procedurally, I guess, is my question. So we don't want to appropriate whatever that would be, the 150 plus the 880 to the engineer's office, right?
Well, and that's another thing we have to talk about going forward with the regular resolution for all the years after this, 26 on, is do we include the health department? Do we include capital funds? Do we include the 50% for the Ross County Engineers Office? That's the way that original 78-138
Yeah, I think
resolution
we're gonna
was.
have to change that.
Yeah.
There's a lot that's changed in government since that.
Mhm.
And when you go back to how all this conversation happened, I actually look at it as it's a pretty big win from the standpoint of when this conversation first happened back in January, we started talking about this. I really didn't know what it would look like for us to have this type of investment being made in township infrastructure. It used to happen at one point. No one really can explain why it stopped happening. But I think it's a commitment that we've made on our behalf, even if we're gonna have a difference of opinion around how the first year split gets broken down. I still see it as we're investing in first things first. Our role as government and our role as commissioners of leadership is to take care of things like infrastructure. And I think, regardless of where we fall on the split question, I think it's something that this board and this office should be wear as a feather in the cap as partnership to smaller jurisdictions. I'm excited that we're moving forward with this.
if we're gonna do that then, let's keep it equal split then, if we're gonna worry about.
That doesn't make sense.
What do you mean it doesn't make any sense?
1 year gets them off the ground. Everybody moves, everybody improves. They got some money.
And the second year equal split will get them even better
No.
off the ground. The third equal
Then-
split will be even give them even better.
Then-
And then that's would be even better. I'm just telling, that, to me, that's not making any sense.
Well,
We're gonna
that
get them
doesn't
off
make
their,
any-
we're gonna get them off their feet. We're gonna give them extra money to get them off their feet.
After a 20-year drought, yeah.
That's not our fault to give them a 20, it was a 20-year route.
Well, I know that. I'm not taking
I
responsibility.
mean, yeah, I'm not taking responsibility for
We
that
need to
right
make a
there.
decision on what we're doing now. So that's why that is. But you know, when we look at carryover, this is possible because of carryover, to your point. Carryover was around 21 million at the beginning of the year. And what do we really need to have in a carryover? What would you say? What would you say we started at for a carryover? How many months of expenses?
2/3, I would say 2/3 of what are to run the county for at least the first 8 months of the year.
First 8 months, okay. First 6 months, I did the calculation, it's 18.5. $18,500,000 is what we need in carryover the last 6 months.
Because right now, if everything would go south, it's just like being at home. I'm not gonna take my checkbook all the way to zero and wait until the end of the month when I get my check to get my balance back up to where it's at.
You know, and I didn't,
Because there's something may happen.
my point wasn't specifically toward carryover. I think carryover is something we need to be very aware of and be thoughtful of how we reserve things for emergency and how we fund things that need funded outside of our budgeted appropriations. But I also think that doing something like this puts us in a position of if things were to go south, when we were to, I mean, things are cyclical when it comes to the economy, when it comes to our government's ability to expect additional funding or not. To me, when you kind of prioritize certain things and say, we're going to spend this $800,000, $900,000 this year. Next year it's going to be more than that. But when things go dry, if they go dry, that's when you begin to say, all right, what are the first things first? What is our role as a government? And one of those, in my opinion, is infrastructure. Now, you could make the argument that townships can pay for their own roads, but the townships are in Ross County. The voters don't know the difference between a township road or a county road or most folks of the general public don't know that. And I think it's an important thing to invest in. We could one day have a situation, and I think that's going back in history. What happened here is, there were drier times and there were cuts that had to be made. But I've been a commissioner now for almost 5 months, and there's things that we support that I think are good things to support, but that as we go through future budgets, we may have to think, what is our level of commitment to this long term? Is it tied to a specific thing? You guys have done that very well, I think, in the last budget, in which I wasn't a part of, but in saying, we're going to look for metrics, we're going to look for explanations of why you're requesting this funding. I think that's an important thing to do, and maintain collaboration like we're doing with this. This took a number of months and a lot of conversations. It took the townships going to bringing it back to their townships to bring us their positions as individual townships. It started with that conversation at the engineer's office in the basement, and association meeting that maybe wasn't an association meeting. Regardless, it was a conversation that was heated at times and definitely exciting, but then most of the folks walked out of there shaking hands, and that's the type of thing for me. You know, I'm ready to get this done. I think the first year split, like you said, we can disagree, and I respect your position, Jim. I do. I see where you're coming from, but for me, I want to get it done, and I think if the townships are in agreement on the first year split, we go ahead and move forward with that, and then we have some long-term steadiness or expectation around what this looks like for the future. Because I think long-term, from a policy standpoint, directing the funding based upon roads and culverts is the long-term thing that we want to achieve. But I recognize also that the townships have said, you know, for the first year, this has been 20 years of not having this money. They all have needs right now, and some of the ones with more roads, you know, or with more road mileage, they've been receiving more money based upon that previous, whatever, the 179,000 I referenced earlier. That has always been split by mileage, so they've been receiving more through the years than the other smaller ones. I think giving everyone an injection of some funding where there is a need for it prepares everyone for next year to go back to road maintenance. So I'm ready to vote on it and ready to move forward with it, and then start talking about it again once we budget for 2026 later this year.
Anything else you want to say about that? I hate this chair.
I'm glad you got that.
This is the second time today that.
He almost went the basement down the car.
I hate this chair.
The rear leg of my chair went through the vent on the floor. Well, moved the vent.
Yeah, moved the vent.
I
He
set my
almost,
chair back, and I went to sit on it, and about went over.
he almost went the basement down the car.
It was only my divine talent and gift, athletic prowess, to stay there. And the window.
And our table.
So,
I'll go ahead, and if you're waiting on, I'll make a motion to approve this resolution.
this resolution is just for the first year only. Do I have a second from you?
No.
No? Okay, I'll make the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any all opposed?
Aye.
Okay, all right. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, we have to make an appropriation for the money to be distributed. And either way, whether it's by mileage or whether it's by, you know, we've kind of gotten part of the conversation about how. It's just the what now. And I think we all agree on the what, that 880 is the number if we want to take the 149 out.
You gotta take the one, is it 149,
Or
180?
it's a 14.9. 149,000.
We gotta take the 149,000 out of that.
Yeah. Should be
731.
Yeah.
So that should be
Can I-
changed to 731.
If
We
you
want-
can just scratch that out and change it, I'll change it on the computer
Okay.
and have Jerry sign it.
Okay, so do I have a motion to appropriate funds from the general fund to the construction sales tax township fund for equal distribution to 16 townships? Now, it's not for the distribution, equal distribution, but that's for the amount of money we're appropriating.
Does it say equal on there?
The
just says
reason is equal distribution of 16 townships, that's the amount. So, you know, in my mind, point taken here, but
If our appropriation says equal, I'll still say no.
Okay, for distributions to 16 townships.
I will say, I'll make that motion
Okay.
to,
Second.
The second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
because
Things that I
really,
do for you.
really, we changed something. Because of the $149,000 of goods that Charlie has been doing by the road mileage, we are changing everything of that 79 resolution.
Did we ever find out where that was rescinded?
It never
It's
was.
never been rescinded.
We need to just rescind it.
We'll just have to rescind it and redo the percentages.
So that needs 2 public meetings as well, right?
That needs to, okay.
And then the replacement of that with equal distributions going forward.
Or we
This
don't even need-
resolution takes care of this year.
Yeah.
That just takes care of, yeah.
So going forward, it's gonna be by road mileage. So we're all singing harmony here, right?
Yeah.
But we gotta,
I thought it referenced that in this too.
I think.
no,
No,
that's just for this.
that was- okay,
This is
that was
only
a
for
different-
2025
that was- yep.
distribution.
That was an earlier rendition I'd seen. Okay.
So we may not really need to rescind the 1979 resolution.
I want to rescind it just because it's got 2% for the health department, which at the time. that
If
this
we're
was-
gonna do it, we might as well stick to the whole thing.
No, I mean, I think we need
Well,
to
they got a
redo it and
fund.
modernize it, because the reason for that not making any sense anymore is because now there's a property tax levy, and they're receiving direct millage. I couldn't make the argument that they would need a percentage of the sales tax in addition to a property tax levy that's already on the books. The other stuff,
Do we know if they have been continuing receiving that 2% of that 0.5%?
they've not, and actually the funds that are spoken to, the other percentages, there's nothing, we haven't been reserving or collecting or directing that revenue either. You can look at our capital fund, which is supposed to have been receiving, what, 12% or something?
Right.
15%.
15% since 1979. There's like $150,000 in there or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's not, none of this stuff has been done in practice. We only discovered it when the townships brought this resolution to us specifically. I have no problem with directing by resolution certain portions of the piggyback sales tax revenue. I think that's a good idea to say we're gonna have some sort of revenue stream going on a percentage basis to these issues every year. I think we need to modernize that into what are our needs today and tomorrow, and what's a more appropriate level of support than that. Rescinding the 79 resolution, regardless of that, makes sense because it should have already been rescinded, and it's not been in practice for at least 20 years.
2004,
So
wouldn't it?
Still get it off the books.
get it off the books officially, and you talk to the prosecutor, and what do you do in a situation like this when you have kind of an outdated resolution that was written 40 years ago and hasn't been in practice for 20?
And we don't have to spend the whole 0.5%. I mean, we can put more in the general
Yeah.
fund than is outlined here, which is 20% goes into the general fund. 50% goes to Charlie for township, or for county roads and bridges, culverts. Take the 2% health district out. Keep the township road maintenance 13%. Now, if Charlie wants to help them out, fix a slip or something emergency comes up, he's got money.
I think Charlie's got some ideas of what he wants to
Yeah.
talk to us about on how we can more right-size our participation with him. In 1979, the revenue model for county engineers was different than it is
Mhm.
today. They didn't have the same revenue streams from the state that they have now. That being said, there's definitely one of the conversations that came from the sales tax township discussion was, what does the county engineer and the county commissioners do and what's our appropriate role when there is a slip or something that's an unexpected, urgent, expensive fix. We don't have the resources to fix that within our own budget, within theirs. Traditionally, how we've supported things like that have been through a loan that we support, but there's no programmatic guidelines on how we do that. And if all 16 townships came to us in 1 year and said, we need a loan for $300,000 like the one we just did, that now all of a sudden, instead of a $300,000 loan, you're looking at the commissioners becoming a lender to 16 different townships. There's definitely room, a lot of things that we can do and get creative and craft new policy that makes sense and that helps everyone. And we don't have, in my opinion, we shouldn't shackle or chain ourselves to the thought process that was happening back in 1979 that hasn't been in practice since 2004.
Well, if we give 50% of the 0.5% to Charlie, last year's numbers, that's 3.35 million. Just on that. That's in addition to all this grant writing and all the other mechanisms of funding road maintenance for the county. Next year's projection of 9.2 is 4.6 million. That in and of itself fixes Cook's Hill.
Yeah, and I like having that conversation. The only other side of that conversation that we're gonna have to make sure we think through though is right now this revenue goes directly to the general fund. And we've been lucky that we've had years of carryover, years where our actual revenue has exceeded our projected revenue. But we'll have to, as we start tying down specific parts of that general revenue, that funding stream that was previously since 2004 going directly to the general fund, we're gonna have to eventually have the conversation of what comes at the expense of that, especially from a budgeting standpoint.
That's why.
You know, that's why I keep saying first things first, because so much of the smaller levels of support that we bring to organizations who request support from the commissioners, so much of it comes from this place of, well, our general fund is exceeding, we're having a carryover year after year because our revenue is exceeding our projections. Now as we tie up some more of that, especially tied to a specific revenue stream, all of that has to be in concert with one another. I'm okay with that because to me, spending money on roads, spending money on bridges and culverts, spending money on those basic things that people expect to be of high quality and they expect their tax dollars to go to, I'm all about it, but we just have to know on the back end that conversation that we're gonna have to say no more to people who are coming in and requesting it. And that's just outside of the conversation of those groups who we know are gonna, you know, the other elected officials and the budget line items that we're to some degree obligated to support.
Well, that's why we have to fully understand limits and capacity, especially in income versus expense. If we go 6 months as an adequate carryover to maintain the account, that's $18.5 million. If we go 8 months, it's 24 million. I mean, we don't have enough in there right now. That's 24.7 million for 8 months to cover our expenses on a $37 million budget. That's what we need to survive 8 months with no income. It's 24.7 million.
Well,
I mean, that's just the math.
with the other thing to remember too, and this is where we came from in 1979, is directing those toward particular funds for certain things so that not everything's running out of your general fund. That helps you build up something over time.
Mhm.
And the other aspect of it is we've got a carryover that is within our general fund, but we also have very liquid assets that are within our investment portfolio, which the timing's great on that because we're gonna have an investment advisory meeting
Right,
here shortly.
coming up here.
That's the other piece of funding that can be deployed, you know, if needed, and bringing back the what's the word? The comparison to how you might manage your own finances. At some point, it doesn't make that much sense to have a giant savings account when you could be investing and earning on that. But then when you need it, it's liquid enough for you to pull it
Mhm.
out if need be.
Yeah, we got a savings account in the 401.
Yeah,
That-
yeah,
that's the
we've
same
got,
thing as
we've
a
got those two
carryover.
things. And we've always traditionally, I said we, you know,
Uh,
but we as Ross County have, even prior to you guys being here, have reinvested the earnings of that investment portfolio to the point that it's gotten very robust.
Mhm.
And at some point, I think it makes sense to start talking about not just how we reinvest that, but how we maintain it for emergency purposes, or a certain portion of it for emergency purposes, as if it were a rainy day fund. And then the other aspect of it, when do we start putting some of that money to work to fund some of the things we know are down the pike that we need to do? We've talked about the courthouse a lot, and I'm one who believes that we do need to make an investment in the courthouse. We have to maintain what we've got. We've got new roofs that are needed. We've got a lot of those things that are only going to get more and more expensive as time goes on. But what we haven't talked about is the appropriate level of, or the appropriate way to fund that, and if it makes more sense to finance it long term, or find some combination thereof that would help us to cover those costs more directly up front.
And that's something that's gonna have to be decided fairly soon.
Yeah, we understand that.
Yeah, we want to make that decision on that courthouse, we need to do it and do it here.
I mean, they will be providing you guys with the numbers as a construction manager at risk. And that will provide you numbers for all the things that were scoped in that project, all the stuff that comes out of that pre-construction work. And then you can decide, you know, well, I don't wanna spend that much on this or that, and we
Then we
can
can move
figure
it
out
stuff.
other options or cut things out if that's what you wanna do.
I think overall what we're trying to do is force on ourselves the same discipline that we are forcing in the other departments. And that there's
Yes.
no sludge funds, there's no wasted accounts, there's no what ifs.
But there's,
outside of our-
in the other departments, nobody comes to them and that, nobody goes to the auditor's office and says, can you give me $20,000 to help run the reentry program? Nobody does that. Nobody goes to the treasurer's office and says, can you give me $25,000 for,
The budget's yours though. That's
it's, I mean, the budget belongs to
Budget's
us.
ours.
Mhm.
Yeah, the budget belongs to us.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I think that's why it will be important when we sit down with the auditor here later this year, start developing a budget. We encompass all of those things very accurately. And then we stay disciplined. Once we have a good budget that we know and we can rely on, then we can use it as a budget that is a guiding tool for what we reference back to frequently. And of course, there's gonna be things that are unexpected that might go over or might go under, but you have a better idea of it. Your point, Edie, man, it doesn't sound like a lot because this group is asking for 20 and this group is asking for 25. And what they're doing is generally good things for the community. Over years, some of them have come to rely on that funding for the commissioners. But I don't think that at least I will say, we don't, I have not always really recognized how quickly all of that adds up to being big dollars and big cents,
Mhm.
$20,000 at a time. The commissioners, the board of commissioners can't become this grant program for every non-profit or non-government entity in the county. We can provide support to that, I think, in other ways, or where appropriate, where they're filling a gap that government should be doing, but doesn't but is it positioned at this time to do, or where it's an enhancement to something that we're already doing, and that's, you know, for $20,000, we would be doing it, but, you know, it would cost us 100 or more every year to do. It's a collaborative thing. I look at it like, you know, we make a pretty sizable contribution to economic development in Ross County. I think more than any other entity, or any other government entity. But we do that because we get to share that. It would be way more costly and have less impact in the community because of the collaboration that exists there than if we would just take that and bring it into our house. So
Yeah, it's not only just the fact of getting something done, it's how that something gets done. How effective is it? What's the ROI to it? You know, those are all the things we're looking at, and we're measuring that against the comprehensive plan. So is it going to contribute to that, or is it not?
And we'll be done with that soon. That'll be something that'll be a vision we can all get behind. So.
And then these guys.
Hey, how we doing, fellas?
What's
What's going on? How you doing? Happy New Year.
Hey guys.
They don't want.
We were just talking about it.
All the interest income, all right, good to see you.
Oh,
Good to see you. Oh, I don't make you get up there.
That's okay.
Beard's looking good, man.
Yeah.
No.
Howdy. How are you?
Who knew? This is the first one to say that.
Right before lunch. Belly's
Yeah.
hungry.
We had breakfast too.
Oh, what do we have?
We went to Carl's Townhouse and had breakfast. Well,
look at
take it back, we had a meeting at Carl's Townhouse.
Very nice.
Legislative briefing with a bunch of other counties,
Cool.
commissioners, and
Nice.
state
Leadership.
The state reps and stuff.
Nice. Any big changes, or was the big topic?
Yeah,
of
we whooped
discussion?
them into shape.
Did you get him in shape? All right. I like it.
Jack almost fell through the window, other than that, we're good.
Yeah, I almost threw myself out the window. It was pretty active.
Got a little rowdy.
That's right. That's what it sounds like.
share trouble today.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, thanks for making the time today.
Yeah.
Y'all know the song and dance here. Certainly nothing going on in the economy. There's nothing called tariffs. I'm sure you haven't heard anything about that or anything.
Just screaming along.
Streaming along, yeah, right. But no, in all seriousness, anything that y'all want me to make sure that I cover today, and there's a lot of what we call uncertainty or uneasiness to some degree in the market, which we'll talk through some of that here shortly. But anything that I can cover,
It'll be all right at the end. Why don't you just go ahead as planned here?
it'll be all right then. And that's the big thing. It's it gets a lot of headline attention of, hey, what's going to happen with tariffs, and it's inflationary and so on and so forth. But you're not really seeing evidence of that totally yet. And a lot of it depends upon what the corporations are going to be doing if they do impose higher prices. And they may raise prices, they may not. Depends on each company and their own individual goals. So really interesting around that as you dissect it and really study it from that point. Portfolio's in great shape. We'll talk about the projected interest income, and Dave's doing a really good job across the board there. But as we open up to page 3, just to give everybody an idea, as the Fed funds rate certainly drives a lot of our interest income and projections and where the market's heading from a benchmarking standpoint. But what we're looking at here, when we look at the market and where the Fed is stating on interest rate cuts the remainder of the year, you're getting the Fed coming out and really looking around 2 rate cuts versus the market projecting 4 rate cuts this year. And so why that's important as we look at this, it certainly is going to affect interest income overnight. So in Star, Ohio, your Huntington Bank overnight account, when the Fed drops interest rates, that tends to move front-end rates quicker, lower, and so which would directly affect interest income that we've been accustomed to receiving for some time. But as we continue to move forward here, what that orange line is representing what the current effective rate is. So the effective rate tends to trade between the Fed funds range. And so all this is charting out is at each of these upcoming Fed meetings, on where it's priced in, that effective rate is going to be at each one of those particular points in time. So as we know, the current Fed funds rate is at the 4.25 to 4.5 range. One is predicting from the market's perspective as of 4/16 that we will get a 1/4 basis point rate cut come June and July, as well as subsequent meetings as we move forward into the fall and into the winter as well. Again, this is just what the market's predicting, not necessarily where the Fed's at. But, again, the old adage of don't fight the Fed tends to hold true to some degree. So certainly be interesting as we continue to move forward, but that trajectory does look to be remaining lower as we move forward. Looking on page 4 as we look over inflation. Maybe we've had inflation fatigue, but as we look at the Fed's 2 mandates of inflation and maximum employment, the employment front certainly tends to be under the microscope a little bit more than inflation, as whether we're looking at core PCE, which excludes food and energy, or CPI at the high level there, which is going to be encapsulating of everything under the entire calculation. The one thing that I notice is obviously we've pulled off of our peaks, coming out of the pandemic, and inflation has stabilized. Now, we're not at the 2% level that the Fed has historically said they want to see inflation at. But what you're hearing more and more market pundits say, is 2% even realistic to even be able to reach? And so continuing to monitor that is certainly something that we're looking at. And I think there's going to be some more manufacturing data of the like coming out this week that we'll see how inflation is taming here over the prior quarter.
I certainly wish they would show inflation numbers in cumulative form instead of, this is so misleading.
Yeah.
Yay! No, not yay.
Yeah. It's always interesting how they dissect the information, and then when you look at even like the super core, which excludes like rents and of the like, it's really a couple subcategories that you continue to feel inflation.
Well, and it's just because inflation's gone down to inflating slower. It's the price is inflating at a 2% rate instead of a 9% rate. I think a lot of folks, we had such a high inflation that was underreported as well for a number of years, that people are still adjusting to the price changes that happened that first began 3 or 4 years ago. So it's difficult, but
certainly.
It's good to hear that it's starting to level off.
Yeah, the extortion or inflation, we've all been hurting. It's always a joke I always make with some of my coworkers. I'm like, the things that seem to went up in price are the things that I need the most: coffee and eggs. And but you're starting to see some reprieve on that front.
And some chickens.
It's funny you say that. One of my coworkers, he has some land and he got 17 chickens the other day. But he said those are really hard to find now because I think everybody's been doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So when you take out 1 million birds, it hurts.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
So when you go to the store and get chickens and you want land hens and you end up getting 10 chickens, 7 out of 10 are roosters.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
He's like,
that's the problem with it there.
Yeah. As we look at growth, it's certainly under the microscope, and why growth is important. Longer term yields that, when we say really out past 2 years, are going to be really dictated by growth expectations, inflation expectations, geopolitical uncertainties. And so, we've seen the stock market be a little volatile, we could call it, and you've seen yields really whipsaw over that time period due to that volatility. Growth certainly is, like I said, under the microscope here as we look at real GDP, which incorporates inflation. but the expectation is that we're going to be growing at a modest clip lower than where we were in 2024. And so a lot of this, obviously, as we look at whether it's decreased federal spending, some tariff uncertainty that we need to wait out to see what happens. We're a majority when you look at purely from a recessionary side of things, that's what continues to be under the microscope, that economists are not forecasting a recession into 2025, which, in Nick's crystal ball, I think we're a little probably an overreaction. I don't think, in my opinion, we wouldn't see one. Could it happen? Sure, but employment market has remained sufficient and stable throughout this time. So growth is certainly something that we're continuing to watching, and let's let tariffs really work themselves out to see what all takes place there.
I say, 'cause this stuff is handled, try to figure out what's going on. You have a tariff today and you don't have a tariff tomorrow. It's the same thing, and we just move from one place to another and it's trying to figure out what.
Right. That's exactly right. And there's some income tax rollbacks or what have you that there's been even some talks on. So there's a lot of things that are continuing to be worked upon in the market that we haven't fully digested yet. But as we look at the unemployment rate, again, when we look at a full range of employment really to be in that between that 4.5% to 5.5% range, the unemployment rate has been below 4.5% for 41 consecutive months. So as we look back to that, it's kind of interesting. I'm a history guy. That's the second best in history since World War II. So again, the employment market has remained strong, and which has been a big reason of why the Fed has been adverse to cutting interest rates maybe a little sooner than they would want to, because the employment rate has remained in that sub positive category. So their tone has really remained patient. Let's see a hiccup in the labor market, which you get some pushback from Washington to say, hey, you're late to the game when you're waiting for that data to roll in. That's when things have really started to already transpire. So again, that's why you're seeing the disconnect to some degree between what the Fed is stating on rate cuts, between what the market is pricing in between the two.
Sure.
But as we look at yields on page 7, the one question we always ask is now still a good time to get into the market if rates are starting to move lower and adjust? Well, one, we've been extending the duration in the portfolio for some time now as we've come in and have these conversations, preparing for these times to protect the portfolio. But two, when we go back and look over history, the current 5-year and 2-year Treasury yields are at very competitive rates when you look back over the last 20-ish or so odd years from an income standpoint. So for us, these yields are certainly very, very attractive in the market. You're starting to see some spread, we'll call it, between a 5-year Treasury and a 2-year Treasury. I'll bet only a few basis points here or there, but still you're getting what we'll call more of a positive sloping yield curve, which is a normal environment. We go back to our economic textbooks there. So overall, still a really nice time to get into the market and lock into these yields when we can. Any questions on the economic front?
No.
Cool. So switching gears here to the portfolio, this is the page we like the most. We can draw our eyes to the I'll call it under your security section as we look to see the total earned income fiscal year to date over 570,000. I think the big one here that David's done a really, really, really nice job on is protecting this interest income with the anticipation of rates moving lower. Mm-hmm. And so as we're having conversations when we have these maturities to looking to extend the duration of the portfolio or really just focusing in on maturities 3 to 5 years, we've been doing that for some time now, has resulted in us to have projected interest income for the remainder of the fiscal year to be over $2.4 million. So you're close to $3 million in interest income just on the securities That doesn't even include income earned in Huntington and Star either. So, you're, knock on wood, we don't get too drastic changes from the Fed, but you're gonna be somewhere over I guess close to $4 million in interest income this year. It's gotta be a record. Yeah.
Well, and so we were just looking before this meeting, and we met before we got here, and I have that spreadsheet. I think I tagged you guys on interest income, just kind of high level points. Back in 2022, my first full year in office, we were doing less than $1 million total between Star and Huntington and U.S. Bank. So that's been the entire strategy over this entire time, is to take advantage of these rates, lock out for as long amount of term as possible, protect that interest, and take advantage of what we can while we can. And I think that's bearing the fruit. We're seeing those numbers here. We've extended out the total maturity, and we've also protected those yields for as long as possible. We'll continue along that strategy for as long as conditions persist. And I feel pretty good with the direction that we've gone.
Well, either way, I think as conditions change, the strategy will change too, but there's a lot of comfort. I would say here, on my part, in what David's done and with everyone who you work with, to say, here's the conditions today, we're going to maximize whatever the opportunity is based upon these conditions. And that proactive management of this has shown in a few short years a big impact, and makes us feel more comfortable when we're start talking about things like we just were, of what's a carryover, what's a rainy day fund. It's good to know we've got our investment portfolio that's strong and that's growing and yielding very well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was even the time too, David, before you were in that seat where interest rates were rising really quickly. And so the big focus of ours was actually shortening the duration of the portfolio, so we could capture those front end higher rates, and then when we saw things starting to point the other way, extending longer. So you're right, it's very tactical in the strategy where we're able to adjust based upon all the fun economic stuff that we talked about earlier.
That stuff's always fluid. So if we do start seeing rate cuts too, like you mentioned earlier, Star Ohio, they change their daily yield every single day, and it reacts very quickly to those larger market catalysts. And so right now we're keeping, and we have kept for the last couple of years, a much larger balance in Star Ohio than we had prior to that when the yield was next to nothing. But those are the kind of things that we have to be fluid on, we have to react to pretty quickly, and we have to kind of decide what is that balance between liquidity for what we need in operating income now versus what we want to try and lock in the long term. And I think we've been pretty fortunate to walk that line pretty well and take as good advantage as we can. But once again, we're always reacting to what the changes in the market are and making the best decisions possible for best outcomes for Ross County.
Are we currently still rolling over the interest income into our next level investments? Or are we securing any of that investment or that interest in income into a capital lineup?
So right now, currently, until we have disbursements approved and then money needs to be moved out of these investments, I do roll over all of it. Yeah. So, I work with the auditor's office constantly in terms of what we need for different disbursements, in terms of one on a day-to-day basis, and especially when we close out collections, we have disbursements to the townships and all the other departments. I work with the auditor's office to make sure that we have the cash flow. That's also part of the personal strategy I have with our income portfolio in terms of how much I keep in Star Ohio, because that's pretty well liquid, where I can move that from a pretty high yield investment over to the bank pretty quickly when I know about certain disbursements that are coming up and I have a projected schedule and in total. So outside of the money that's in Huntington, which we try and keep that as pretty low as possible, then Star Ohio, that's what feeds different disbursements, takes care of short-term good yields, and then beyond that, with the portfolio in U.S. Bank, we're looking out long-term, trying to lock in maximum interest gains over the next 3 to 5 plus years.
We got to have a meeting that kind of rolls all that together with our project list, like the courthouse renovation and the LCMB building, and figure out the best way to do that, and how to capitalize, where to take out bonds or loans, and where to pay cash as we go, so we don't injure ourselves. and when's the best time to make different moves?
Well, I would say whatever it is that you need from us, let us know, and we can start working through that. You know, if you want a projected income schedule for a particular period of time, so that you know what to expect and can plan on that, we can start working on putting something like that together for you guys, so you have that, you know, in your back pocket. So when you're making these kind of plans, just let us know, and we'll get that information to you.
I met with you before budget time last year, and you know what kind of things, capital projects we were looking at for the coming year. That hasn't changed a whole lot. Maybe the amounts have. But I think that's where we start. Let's just, I'll resurrect that, and maybe we can all meet up here and huddle up and see what's the best approach to fund those kind of things. The courthouse renovation, I mean, we have a contractor selected, the architectural part's done. We're ready to step off on that. That's about $8.5 million. So you got that in your pockets? I mean, no, but we're gonna have to talk about that and
Yeah,
take out.
and I remember meeting with you about that, and I think that's a fantastic idea, at least if not for all of it, but a portion of funding some of those projects with some of the interest income, I think makes sense, and it's something that we would have the capability to do, and we probably want to plan out,
Yeah,
you know,
and I don't
depending on
wanna
what the
damage your
disbursements and
strategy
timeline
at the
are.
same point, you know, I don't want to damage your strategy on money management because it's gotten us to where we're at now. I mean, that's valuable.
Well, that's why I think being collaborative with David and making sure that we all work together to talk, which is why I'm excited about what you're doing. But yeah, the courthouse needs a new roof. The archives building needs a new roof. There's facade crumbling outside. Those are things we're going to have to do. But to Jack's point, we don't want to upend the strategy that you're using that's working. So I think working together to figure out a way to address some of these things is what we should be doing is working.
Sure.
Well, I think that's best case scenario too, so that, you know, if we work together on this, we can plan and we can make adjustments to our strategy that work best for everybody involved, right? If I just get surprised by this and all of a sudden,
Yeah,
you
when
know,
it
hey,
comes in, we walk in the door and I, were you to say, David?
yeah, I need this
Can we have about
money
$8
by next week.
Can we
or
have about
something.
$8.5 million? And you're gonna say, yeah, but I want you to take.
Can I make that happen? Sure. Would I rather have a heads up and I can
Yes.
make a better plan for that? Yes.
And with those projects, we're accustomed to having these. You know, a lot of times you're not going to need all that up front to some degree. There'll be partial spends as you go on through the project. And with how we have the portfolio structured, we have about $2 million or so coming due every month in the portfolio. So if we start to say, hey, we know for the next 3 months we're going to need $2 million, well, we can plan and say, well, let's take $1 million each from each of the maturities and only put back 50%. That's very easy to make that adjustment.
Would this be something we can plan for next Monday? And I don't know, be with just you or with Nick too? And I think the full team is important to be at the table.
Well, I would have to look at my schedule. I think Nick would probably also have to look at his.
Yeah, let's just consider that, and then
How about that? Nick and I will talk after this. He'll look at his schedule. I'll email Kathy and make sure, you know, let her know either way if we could both be available
Okay,
and
yeah,
get it on the schedule.
and in the meantime, we'll get you an updated project list, and we can go from there.
That works.
This is perfect too.
We
So
get
this
to-
is actually what we tried doing with Devin about the Appalachian Community Grant Program money there. That one's been an interesting one to try and coordinate too, because it's such a large amount of money with such a varied and hard to kind of lock down what their spend schedule really is too. So
30 projects, that's tough to do. They're all
it's
happening at the
well,
same
they have a
time.
projected spend schedule, but even that is something that gives us a good point to work from. That we know at least kind of a minimum what we're looking at on a monthly spend schedule. But even that, they don't get those additional disbursements for those projects until they've spent down to a certain level, and there's no guarantee that they spend down to that certain level at the projected
Yeah.
time that they say that they're going to. So that's been kind of another line that we've had to walk, and that's another reason why I've kept that Star High balance a little bit higher than I normally would, which once again, we're in a very fortunate place with the yields out of that. That has not been, you know, too detrimental to our portfolio strategy. Now that could change in the next year, but anything could change.
Yeah.
You know, but for the time being, that's really worked well for us. And also, while that's been a kind of a tightrope to walk, having all that extra money go through Ross County has been a benefit to Ross County. So I will say it's a net win for us. It's been a little bit extra strategizing in terms of how we handle the portfolio, how we handle those disbursements. But like I told them from the very get-go, Ross County was capable, and I think we're doing a pretty good job.
Well, wait till the contractors get involved.
Yeah.
They'll really start scrambling on you then.
Yeah. At a higher level, though, to what Nick opened up with is, we're still going to operate in some level of uncertainty right now. There's so much changing within the status quo of basically every institution, financial institution, whatever it is. It's changing right now. We just don't know how it's going to change, and so I think being as proactive as we can, aware of the tea leaves and reading them as well as we possibly can is smart, and we're in a much better position for change because of what you guys have done in managing this effectively, and kudos to you and thank you to
Yeah, we appreciate it.
us.
Absolutely. Good. Well, the last page here, just to give everyone an idea on the maturity distribution from a yield breakdown. And so why I like to highlight this first and foremost, your lowest yielding maturity buckets, or is everything that's going to be maturing in the next next 12 months, next 12 to 24 months. And so you can expect that your portfolio is going to have the yield even go higher, which is going to help increase that interest income as well too. These are just some of the yields falling off from the pandemic that we purchased.
Yeah.
Yep. So all positive stuff going on here, and then we'll certainly can plan and go through everything else as needed.
Great, we appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Great seeing y'all.
You too, Nick.
See you next quarter. Well, I guess we'll maybe see you Monday.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time, fellas.
See you later.
All right. Good seeing y'all.
I'll follow up with you guys later. That's okay.
That's good. See everyone.
See you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Good, we'll get back to Resolution 1825. That's the first year appropriation. You have a movement, I have second.
You already voted.
Voted no, so we have to sign this.
I actually don't know how that works.
I don't either.
I don't need it.
Gavin,
He's just not sign it, or?
is he supposed to sign it still?
No.
I didn't think so.
All right.
We only voted
Huh?
apart twice.
Yeah, we'll be okay.
I have a resolution from the Development Department, Planning and Development Department for application of the opioid remediation grant program on behalf of Ross County Sheriff's Department. Have availability of $60 million in grant funding. So this is a approval for.
So moved.
You're still not splitting, are you? This is.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Well, my thing is I'll keep it to myself.
Don't do that.
You can say whatever you
What's he
want.
gonna do with $60,000?
Oh.
Well, that's.
Am I gonna hire a new chief deputy for $60,000?
No, we'll just promote one after that they retire.
I mean, it's tough. I mean, I hate to say that, but
Medication supplies for inmates, I mean, there's definite needs in here.
Okay,
The needs
yes.
They need refined, absolutely.
yeah, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 And this is in 2 spots. Well, there's a technical housing assistance programming fund. That, how much is this one for, Kathy? To give this is from Kim Hardesty, the resolutions for grant applications.
I don't know if that was an actual grant application, that might go along with that grant
Yeah, I
application.
should think, I think,
Goes along with the other one?
Yeah.
yeah, I think they did
And
again.
then one of them is from Joanne, is a letter of support, I believe.
We need to sign that letter of support.
Yes.
Okay.
The thing is, Jim, I agree, there's sometimes where you're like, what? Yes, what's 60,000 here, they're gonna do? Kim has done a good job on some of these, she chases down every stinking grant that there is.
Yeah.
And, some of them, I mean, I'm like, why is there even a grant for, you know, that not in this case, but there's been grants I've seen where I'm like, what, where's that grant coming from?
But again, you know, everybody says, you know, they look at that grant, why, that's free money. Well, it's not free money. That's our tax money that we put into that, and they got it sitting around in the closet somewhere, and say, oh, we didn't know it was sitting there. It's been sitting there for 20 years, and it's got this much money added to it. But we know what that is. That's the opioid settlement that the state got.
Yeah, that's one Ohio. All three places.
Yes, sir, I think so.
It's one of these things where sometimes they,
3 times where it's indicated on both sides.
Hey, Brad, I'm thinking that response team huddle event, not because, I mean, you're obviously here, but Ryan Scribner from Montrose is going to call in, so I figured
Okay.
we can pull that out of there, but I don't know how to do that.
Yep, we can do it.
It's,
Can
no,
you-
no rush, we got till.
Did you send that to me?
Yeah, I think so. I sent it as a calendar event.
Let me look here.
Okay, we have an application for liquor license for Dogwood Hills Golf Course,
some of
Where's Dogwood Hills Golf Course?
down by, where are we, on the board?
the board road.
Right up 23.
Go check that out sometime.
Yeah, it's a nice course.
Especially if they've got liquor license, second.
If you got Billy go for it. It's a good place, got some good vistas on
Oh.
the tees, yes.
One of the owners is, county commission down by county. I can't remember which one it is.
Brought my golf clubs.
It may be.
Warrior Fall, that's the two I know.
It's beautiful. I don't know what I was thinking.
All right, so we got, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I just initial this, right? You signed this, Kathy? as
Yeah,
clerk?
just initial it, that's fine.
It's, we met him down to, we was down to the comic plant when we did that tour of,
Mhm.
he was down there.
Yes.
I talked to him, now I can't remember what his name is, and that's a shame.
And I have application for liquor license for Corner Market. Where we get happy buying groceries.
I think that move,
It's
name
just
has
itself.
just moved.
Yeah, them just changed.
Name has changed.
Changed.
Yeah, they have a liquor license.
Yeah, they got a liquor
Changed
license,
the
name's
name.
just been changed. So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Yeah, because I've been there before, they, that's Lucy beer in there.
Yeah, I don't know why it's changed.
This is a resolution to raise the reimbursement for travel budget from 52 cents a mile to 70 cents per mile to be in line with the state of Ohio.
So moved.
Second,
Yes.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Kathy, we already do that anyway, am I correct?
Mr. what?
We talked about it in here in February, but we never did a resolution.
Okay.
And the girls in the auditor's office have to have that in order to pay other
Yeah.
departments
Tour.
for money.
Okay.
This one is a application by actually Joanne from the Services or Building and Planning Department for State Ohio Historic Preservation and Native American archaeological sites that you have to work with that office, the state historic preservation office, in
Oh.
determining if it's worthy to dig up and how to do that. And buildings over 45 years old, you have to go through that in the downtown historic district. There's a lot of moving parts of this. I read this over last night, but it's just saying we're going to be working with the SHR to be in compliance with how they want that handled when we come across things of historic nature.
This is our plan for dealing with preservation when we,
Paul.
okay.
Yeah, so this is for, goes into effect through December 31st of 2029. So it'll go through the comprehensive plan, and we're gonna be digging in places that probably are gonna need attention.
Yeah, I apologize, I didn't read through that very thoroughly. Is there a deadline in which we need to pass this? Just, I wanna make sure we understand that the impact to our plan here isn't without input from the economic development side of it, because there's a piece of this where we do want to preserve history and preserve our natural history, our Native American history. But this is a big document, if I'm understanding correctly, because it lays out our county's policies for communicating with the state, and the state is going to reference that policy if we're ever in a situation where we're trying to get development to happen at a place and there's all of a sudden a Indian
That happens
pipe.
a lot.
Yeah, and I don't know to what degree that, like, I'm not saying that we just want to make sure that we're not accidentally cutting ourselves off from something in the future if we're not,
I don't
like,
think-
how legally binding is some of this stuff, but
Yeah, I don't think there's much to fight this. Because I ran into this as mayor out at Kersey Crossing with the Adena Indian mound out there. We had to build a parking lot around it.
yeah.
The same type of things happening on Cohen's project. And here's all the acronyms for the parties of where you gotta go check things out when you run into some bones.
Mhm. Okay. You guys are comfortable with it?
I don't see
Yeah, I
there's a whole
will, but
lot
it
much
just,
we can do
okay, I
about it.
might be making big
So
deal of
moved.
nothing. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
I just wanna make sure.
I think that's a good question. I mean, we have to look at things like that.
Just like all the, there's 2 grants that we have for the sewer project. One's from the feds and one's from the state. They require environmental. And
Everything
we've
done.
done all that already too.
Brad,
Yes, sir.
email that you got or we got or where it was about Narrows Road and another
I
road.
have that right here.
I'm working on that.
You are?
That is, I'm taking it, the road he's talking about, it's not a road, it's a driveway. that
Martin
goes-
Smith,
Yeah, that goes into
Camp Sherman?
Camp Sherman.
Yep.
He's talking about the Camp Sherman that's on Narrows Road, it's National Guard property.
Right.
So I'm working with the National Guard. I'm supposed to have a meeting with, I was gonna have a meeting with them Friday, but we couldn't get together, so I'm supposed to have a meeting with them. It's their drive.
Well, I didn't know if you were gonna put it on Narrows Road instead of their drive.
Well, I'm thinking, because when I start reading that, I'm thinking, well, Narrows Road comes nowhere close to Camp Sherman. Camp Sherman is off 104.
Right, this is.
Then I
the
start
actual-
thinking it's the National Guard.
Yeah.
It's the
that-
National Guard.
Yeah.
He's talking about,
This is the road right here.
yeah, but it's not a road, that's
That's
just,
their drive into
that's the
there.
drive into there.
Yeah,
Because they own that and that.
right.
So it's just a drive in there. I'm going to talk to them to see, and probably get with Charlie in this to see if we can, there's really, he has 2 of them down.
Mm-hmm.
There was 3 in that unit that got shot, that died in action. The other one was a person who was just attached to that, to
So do you name it,
the 10,
whatever that?
1194th.
Yeah.
He was just attached to them just to go to over there. So I'm working on that. Probably get with Charlie, because instead of just doing that drive that goes into the National Guard thing, I was thinking about, well, just do Whole Narrows Road and just make it like this is roads dedicated, this part of the road is dedicated to boom,
Those
boom, boom,
folks,
boom,
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that would be easier to do than to try to jump hoops with Ohio National Guard and naming their driveway
Yeah.
into that, so, yeah.
You just remind me, I need to follow up with Charlie on that property, Buck 51. It's been 2 months, it's been 2 months since we first started that. I think they're ready to move if we can get them some comfort that we are.
You got an option then?
We'll move to the CIC.
CIC.
Yeah.
But that's gonna be some process, and we're gonna have to get the prosecutor to probably put a deed restriction of some sort, so, but Charlie needs to get us just the thumbs up on, he said he's got to visit the site and
Right.
look at it, so I'm gonna push him on that. You guys are-
Yeah, he still thinks that Don Carnes bought that or saved that for a certain reason. I remember him talking about
Yeah,
that.
he,
was in here.
he said that, and then he just needs to get up and give us an answer definitive.
The only other thing
Oh, I have to know.
Yeah.
Mine about last week.
The two emails,
Give it to you all.
the emails that the auditor sent here, does anybody have a clue what he wants?
Those ones that I shared with you?
Yeah.
the status one.
I thought that was just giving us a status of where.
It's called- Brad sent it to us, it just says 2 emails from the auditor, and it's dated Tuesday, April 22nd.
He sent those to agencies around the county.
Yeah, sent them to agencies around the county. I don't know what, I mean, he's got a whole freaking slew of people that he sent this to. I mean, they sent it to, Steve O's Pizza.
I think he's a trustee, that Steve-O, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Huh?
he is. Steve-O is he's a Green Township trustee.
Okay.
I think it's,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean,
That's Steve Gino, I think.
22nd, April 22nd. Came from Brad. But,
I think it's just getting ready for, I didn't think anything of it from a.
I was questioned, see, Brad said, he was questioned about 2 emails, which is this. Fellow fiscal officers and administrators. As some of you are aware, the original of this year's $1.3 million Ross County General Fund property tax cut was a July 24 legal opinion by Prosecutor Marks regarding the Budget Commission's independently authority to reduce the county's inside millage as a means to reduce the general fund carryover to provide relief for the Ross County taxpayers.
Right.
This opinion is attached. I don't know what he was looking for. I don't know. Then he was, this year I am researching further opportunities via the Budget Commission to reduce tax rates for the Ross County with general funds carryover have grown such that continued taxation of Ross County real estate, real property at the current rate is increasingly difficult to justify.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's looking, I mean, come to us sometime and talk to us.
Well, ask him to come up and talk about it. I like I said, I talk to the auditor pretty frequently. I didn't see anything from this that was out of the ordinary. And to his point in this email, last year they did do the tax rate cut from the inside millage with the, what's it called, the Budget Commission or the board?
Budget Commission.
Yeah.
They did that absent partnership from us until afterwards. I know there's different ends of that, but what I think would be beneficial is to do what you're saying, is bring us together and start having a collaborative conversation. I know there's tension sometimes, but it's worth doing. And
Yeah, because my thing is people come to us and say, hey, what's going on, and I'm looking at them like a deer in somebody's headlights, buddy, I don't have a clue what you're talking about. And I really hate to do that.
Well, it's my understanding that the state wouldn't let us go any lower than 2.4. That's why that number was picked.
And that's it.
Yeah. And so he's reached the bottom of the barrel of what we can look forward to. Hey, Kev.
How are you?
Good, how you doing?
I'm well,
And-
thank you.
And he's looking for other areas to bring relief to the taxpayers because it's anticipated to go up another 19% this year.
Well, how about come and give us a little
Yeah,
insight
I agree.
on that before he puts all this out and people come to me or come to us and say, damn, this was,
this is why I've said we need to make sure we have a good relationship, because that's a two-way street a little bit on us and on him. We need to convene that in the same way if we want to be a part of those conversations, to be leaders in that as well. So before we go into work session, I think we should go ahead and adjourn.
Yeah, that's why I asked Brett if he had anything left, because that's got to be.
I do, I have
You
stuff.
do have stuff?
Yeah. Let me get this pulled up here.
Well, we got 13 minutes.
We got as long as we want to.
It's good to see you.
We got as long as we want to.
Well, that's true too.
If our meeting is over, the city council meetings goes over all the time, nobody knows.
Be careful.
He cut this guy's completely out.
Be careful now. But you're correct.
Yeah, the only thing I got left is that letter about the horse. We can handle that in executive session, or not executive session, but work session, because there's nothing we can do about that anyway. You don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I read the
Oh,
email. Yeah, I read the email on the horse.
I don't even know who that Adams guy is. South Salem. He doesn't work for the dog. I don't know who they would call.
Fayette County, that's who Fayette County Humane Society handles calls like that for us.
Okay.
But that's something that the dog warden should have brought to us in the first place.
A horse being starved to death?
Huh?
A horse being starved to death?
They would've got a call on it.
I wonder if they did.
They would've got a call.
Because they're not mentioned in here.
Yeah, they're not mentioned.
I know, but they would've got a call on it because cats, dogs, goats, chickens.
It's like a veterinarian. They get into anything.
I gave you that letter not long ago. I didn't know if you had a chance to look at it. This is a letter to send to the folks on Stone Road about the installation of that sewer line. And if they want to have us have a connection point to for their property or not. Yeah, there's a letter there, you guys can look at it.
Yeah.
I'd like to get permission to send it.
County Woods Mobile Home Park, asking them if they want to be part of the sewer project.
How many properties, how far
There's 14 properties on that road.
are we gonna run that?
Well, so that was my
Oh,
next topic.
good.
So we were gonna, let me pull a map for you and show you. Try to get through this before your meeting starts.
I'm good with that letter. I think I read it. I thought we were good.
Yeah, I thought-
I actually thought we went ahead with it already.
All in favor, say aye.
Second.
I think of the folks in Frenchtown as well as potential for that one day if we think that that's an opportunity, or others who might want to connect to that.
Yeah, that includes Frenchtown too, doesn't it, Brett?
It does not.
Does not.
No.
Because they were asking about the
Would it,
football.
from a physical standpoint, Brad, if we were to locate that prison line, or is that's
That's
still?
already above by the prison.
Yeah, it's,
Okay, we're
Yeah.
connected.
It'd be left
we're,
at
we're
the,
connected at Moundsville Road
Nine,
way up.
north of
that.
Yeah, north from
and it
there.
would be left up to them, up to the prison if they're gonna tap into it. It's right behind their back, it's out their back door. That's what
That'd
they
be
keep saying.
another
anyway.
benefit for if we had either the city or.
So originally, we were gonna
Not
start,
the-
we were gonna stop the sewer line right here at Betts Road.
And why
And,
do you gotta give me a little off Betts Road here? I don't know.
okay, so there's the airport.
Uh-huh.
Here's the entry into the airport.
So,
The two
And
rows of hangers.
we were gonna, yeah,
Big hanger there.
what's your orientation here?
okay. Here's 104 going north,
Yeah, I got that.
There's
Well,
Stone
that's
Road.
Stone Road.
coming in. Okay, the sewer line was gonna start right here at Betts Lane, just past the airport. But now that we're talking about building hangars over here, we wanna extend it 500 feet past Stone Road, so that if those guys build those hangars, we've already got taps for them to tie into.
Tie into.
Okay? So that's I'll have another amendment to our contract with MS for the design, because they'll have to do a couple more sheets of this. That's why I haven't sent a letter to Glow Fiber yet, either saying that we want them to remove their stuff,
Okay.
their utility. So that's what this is about. You were asking me where it started.
Yeah, because I was thinking before it wasn't gonna go that, we wasn't gonna go that far.
No, we originally were gonna go to Betts Lane. That's as far as we were gonna go.
Okay.
And that'll be gravity on Stony Road all the way to the first lift station.
Which is gonna be on 104?
No, the first lift station is gonna be, originally, we were gonna take the 104 and turn it here. This
Right.
is floodplain.
And that's why they said
That's why we
couldn't
didn't put it
one
there.
in.
Plus, we wanna pick up the,
Trailer park.
we wanna pick up the trailer park, which is right here.
Yeah.
So the gravity will run from here, right here to the edge of this wood line. It's gonna come down and pick up this sewer plant right here,
Okay.
okay? And then it's going to, that'll be the first lift station there, and then it'll run across our property here. This is our property here, so it'll run from here to there. And when it gets on this property here, this is Rodney Weingartner's, and where this is, you'll see some contracts in here today that I'm gonna show you here in a minute to get the easements to go across this property here. And then it goes across 104 and it runs down this side of the highway, and we're gonna have to have a temporary easement over here, because in order to bore under the highway, you gotta have all on both sides. So there's temporary and permanent easements. The only two permanent easements are right there at his property where we're gonna put the lift station, and the other one will be across Rodney's. Those are the two, and it'll basically run right across here, close to this tree line. That'll be the only two permanent easements we have. And if you remember, I came to you and I said I wasn't happy with the cost of all that work they were doing.
Right.
It was gonna be 57. I got it down to $21,000.
Good. They've been talking about a 104 access to the airport, side Stone Road. Do you know where that's coming from? Do you know where that,
I don't
what
know.
that looks like?
Jody, I don't know where that came from, honestly. I mean, there's been talk about that, but I don't know how else you get on the property unless, you come up one of these drives here. We do own some property here at the end of this one. You'd end up on this side of the runway. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't-
you're on the wrong side of the.
Yeah, there's a lot of thinking about that. The other thing is you can come up here in Andersonville Road. You can come up this way.
Take it all the way.
That's the backside to it. I mean, you can do that now.
I said, you can do that now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
can-
you come up 207 and come in the back way too, off Stone Road.
Mhm.
So that's the old amendment for 57. This is the new one for 21. I need you to sign that one.
So
All
moved.
right for getting the work done cheaper?
You're all right with that, aren't
For
you?
a second?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I think
Just anywhere.
No, I think there's a page there on the last page.
It's Jeff and Mark.
Maybe here. But you
Your slaughter's not over there.
Dry mouth. There you are. Show you this real quick too.
I will not be at the meeting Wednesday.
Okay,
Me and Brad's gonna go to Mark Johnson's office in Columbus.
okay.
You gonna be there? for
Try to
us?
figure things out for the plan.
Okay, pretty important.
So we got Brad.
No. This little piece of property right here,
Yep.
that you guys own,
Yeah.
is where the third lift station's gonna go.
Personal space.
In order to get power there, we had to go through a bunch of hoops to get
Yeah.
this easement.
Yeah.
You need to sign that easement.
Any transfer of funds there?
No.
No. So moved.
Second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That was dead?
Fishing and
Oh, how nice. That's great. Good for you.
turkey hunting with no turkey. I know, don't
Hopefully
even
you got
say
some
Brad.
It all tastes like chicken anyway.
No, no.
You gonna find somewhere else at least?
I got lots of fish.
You still got a lot of weeks.
Lots of, oh, I know.
You got lots of weeks.
It was fun.
Where else?
A lot of fish. Not humor else.
Crappies?
Crappies, catfish, perch,
Did all right then,
yep. Bunch.
Dinner at Devon's.
Yep. Lake Rupert, Kenny Creek.
You know, I remember when I was.
What'd you get in Lake Rupert?
Thank you. That comes
Crappie,
back.
catfish.
Yeah.
Every time I've been in Lake Rupert, I come out with zero goose egg.
Well, you gotta go to the right spot.
This was at
I ran
PTI.
into, I was on my
When
way,
I talked
I
about
was
it, like,
on
you
my
know,
way
for
down
that
there.
much money.
Stopped at a little straight,
And it's
little
gonna
grocery
go
store.
to MS Consultants
Yeah.
because the state wants to be paid
Yeah.
electronically and we don't do that here.
Mhm.
So they're gonna send me an invoice for this amount.
So
If you wanna wait till they send the invoice, we
I said,
can.
where'd you fish at?
Because we can't really pay it until
By
then.
Frankfurt.
But that'll be, that's a permit to install.
That's what I read. I said, I think he said, you're using the wrong thing. He said, what are you doing down here? He said, I'm gonna Lake River. I said, there's a fishing.
Last thing I have is,
I didn't get
these
the thing
are
yet.
I'll show
my
you where.
vacation days. I'm taking 2 days
I'm
this
sorry.
week. One I have to, and one is my birthday. I'm going to the Reds game. That's my trip for the summer, and that's a day off to go fishing.
Thursday?
Okay.
Thursday, going Thursday and Saturday. Are they?
Have a motion to approve time off for Brad?
No.
No. We got one more one.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second.
So let's see, supervisor's signature goes right there. Yeah.
They give Brad time off. Kathy, she
You
won't
ready for
time
me to
off.
pull him up?
She don't want time off too.
Weren't you the one telling him to go home all the time?
Yeah, I am.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn for the day, our formal session.
Is that all, Brad?
That's it. We're done.